Democratic lawmakers have seized on President Trump's alleged use of profanity during a meeting on immigration to criticize the administration. But the jabs hurled at the Trump administration are not necessarily resonating with American voters who just want to see action on immigration. Here to weigh in Philadelphia-based radio host Chris DeGaulle. Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mike.
What are you hearing from listeners about this immigration debate taking place here in Washington?
Well, unfortunately, sidelined a little bit with this ridiculous controversy, as they're calling it. You know, it's a sad day when this president, who clearly trusts, I'm not sure why, but he still trusts the principal parties in this room to speak candidly and privately. I think he comes from an environment where he's used to all oars rowing in the same direction, in the same boat.
Right.
He comes from that background. He's not used to having infiltrators inside a room that would sandbag him on a moment's notice. So whether he said these things or whether he didn't, it's clear it's about seizing power for them, not achieving goals.
Stop me if you heard this before, Chris, but we are less than a week from a possible government shutdown. What do folks outside the Beltway think about that?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that if we're going to hold up military spending, or call this a government shutdown if you want broadly, if we're really holding it up to secure the border, I don't know that that's the plank the Democrats want to walk. I've yet to hear anybody make a cogent argument as to why border security is something we ought to stand against to keep us from funding the government. They've yet to make that argument, and I think it's falling as a very tone-deaf matter for most of my folks anyway that are listening.
Chris, if the president used some rough language in a private meeting with some lawmakers, does your audience care?
No, for heaven's sakes. You know, I said last night on Twitter, Mike, ever since I'm 18 years old, ever since I've been voting in this country, the American left has been telling people, stay out of our bedrooms, butt out, stop with the religious talk, stop with the social mores, stop with the social issues. The second in private, he supposedly, allegedly, says one curse word, and suddenly the left thinks they're the Billy Graham crusades all over again. Where did that come from?
What about the comment made this week by House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi about the people involved with trying to negotiate an immigration deal? Take a listen to this.
The five white guys, I call them. You know, you gonna open a hamburger stand next or what?
So the five guys joke seemed to fall flat in the room. Your thoughts, Chris?
Well, that is the perfect example, Mike, of what we're talking about. If you want to talk about race, you know, Trump says S-hole countries, suddenly that's a racist term. She specifically says five white guys. She invokes race. If ever there was racism on display in an off-the-cuff remark, it's Ms. Pelosi, not the president.
Of course, the assumption here, Chris, in Washington is by late next week, Congress will punt again, meaning a short-term government funding measure. How does that play outside the Beltway?
Well, I think that's just sort of grist for the mill, isn't it, Mike? I think most of us expect that's probably what will happen. What at least folks that listen to this show, and I speak for myself when I say, what nobody wants is to do this clean DACA bill business. A lot of us got very nervous at the idea we'd only talk DACA and nothing else. So wherever you are on DACA, I don't know any conservatives or Republicans that would suggest only DACA, no wall, no border security, no dealing with chain migration. That would be a terrible mistake. So I'd rather wait and prolong it than rush to do something that we'll never go back and fix again.
A few seconds left. Do you have a prediction for 2018? There's a lot of anxiety with a lot of Republicans about 2018. Your thoughts, Chris?
Well, historically, if you want to look at history, though we certainly can't seem to these days as a predictor, maybe Republicans lose the House, perhaps. I actually think Republicans could pick up the Senate. I know they won't lose the Senate. I'd bank on them keeping control of the Senate, but they may actually gain Republicans in the Senate.
All right, after this interview, Chris is heading to Atlantic City to place some bets.
Go Eagles!
Chris DeGaulle in Philadelphia. Thank you, sir.